Much has been written and fictionalized about the relationship of the Menendez brothers. To what extent did they have erotic contact with each other? Astrology can give us many answers. How? Through Synastry and the composite chart of the Menendez brothers. So we will see how the relationship between them is. Let's begin. To begin with, let's go first to look at what the relationship of the Menendez brothers is like. Specifically, we're going to go look at the personal planets and the relationship they had between them. Well, how do we do that? We are going to use two methods. The first is Synastry and the second is the composite chart. First, what is Synastry? It's superimposing one's birth chart over the others and seeing what aspects and what relationships are created between the planets of the two. The first thing I want to analyze is the sun of the Menendez brothers. What is the sun in a person's birth chart? It is the feeling of being me, of what is in tune with me, of my center. It is my personal light. It is what I am going to expose to the world about myself. Lyle was born with the sun in Capricorn and Eric was born with the sun in Sagittarius. So there was already a substantial difference between the two. Lyle would be the responsible one, the controller, the one who knew how to plan, structure, manipulate, dominate the brother. And Eric is the dreamer, the traveler, the one who is always planning or dreaming a better world for both of them, and so on. Here I will always say it. In the relationship of these two brothers, it is very visible that Lyle is the alpha. But I believe that the alpha without the beta does not exist. As the Spanish saying goes, tanto monta, monta tanto. Yes, Lyle is the controller, Lyle is the dominator, but the other is the one who creates the illusion in the background of this relationship. Well, as we can see, the Sun and Mars have a tense aspect in reciprocity in the chart of both. That is, they square each other's Mars to each other's Sun and each other's Sun to each other's Mars. What does this mean? That is the most conclusive sign there is that made them ally for a violent act. In fact, it also raises a possibility of a violent relationship between them or simply the alliance to commit a violent act. But it is also a bit of a signifier of a sexual content within the relationship of the two. The fact that Sun and Mars are in a square, the square is a super dynamic aspect which is going to execute actions in a person's life. So this is the aspect that led him to be able to commit patricide. We can also see that Jupiter and Saturn have a reciprocity in their charts with the Sun. That is, the Sun of one aspects the Jupiter and Saturn of the other, and vice versa. And if you saw the videos that I made of the analysis of each one's birth chart, I tell that Jupiter and Saturn, that they have a tense relationship in each one's birth chart. Lyle specifically has it in quadrature Jupiter-Saturn, and Eric has an opposition, Jupiter-Saturn. This gave them the extravagance, the inanities, the excesses that they had, the economic exaggerations, the wastefulness. It gave them a certain incongruity. So what happens? Curiously, if we see it in the astrological charts of both of them, the Jupiter and Saturn of the other one aspect, the Jupiter and Saturn of the brother. That is called that there is a reciprocity of Jupiter and Saturn between the two. However, it is curious to note that Saturn was actually trine that Sun mutually in both. So what's up with this? They were both teachers of each other. They had or have a lesson to learn from each other. It also gave them the ability to plan things together. Well, now let's look at the relationship of the sibling moons. They both have a natal moon opposition, 3 degrees apart. Lyle has it in Taurus and Eric has it in Scorpio. It really is a sign of attraction between two people, a sign of destiny. When the sun and moon are in relationship, it indicates that there is predestination. In fact, what marks that there is a relationship in astrology is that the sun and the moon have a link. That opposition of the moon and the moon not only gives them that they attract each other, but that they stimulate each other and complement each other. Energetically, it's as if one has what the other doesn't have. Now let's look at the aspects of that moon. Eric's moon has a sextile to Lyle's Mercury, and Eric's Mars has a square to Lyle's Mercury. Well, in conclusion and bottom line, these aspects do have fluid, intense communication and so on. But they have also had some huge disagreements and probably said some very harsh things to each other. They have attacked each other verbally and have hit each other in the soul. Harsh. These signs also indicate very much that Lyle is the dominant one. It is another of the characteristics that clarifies that in the relationship, Lyle was the one who was in charge. And the last feature of the moon is that if we look, all of Lyle's transpersonal planets, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, are related to Eric's moon. That is, Lyle determined a lot about Eric's emotional life. He protected him, he held him back, but he also assaulted him, he manipulated him, he went overboard with his brother many times. Well, going deeper into these transpersonal planets of Lyle that are in relation to Eric's moon. Lyle's Neptune is conjunct Eric's moon. What does this mean? That they were partners in dreams, illusions, mutual fantasies, probably even narcotic use, further experimentation, and a spiritual depth to their relationship. And this Neptune moon also gives them both having perceived the mother as a sick, pathological being. How the family relationship was dysfunctional in every way.
Hey, are you paying attention to me? Well, the moment you've been waiting for has arrived. Subscribe, like, and if you have any opinion or question, leave it in the comment.
Pluto and Uranus make a sextile to this moon. That gives you the feedback. I mean, I would imagine how things went a lot of times between Lyle planning the shape of the one they had to get, where they got the gun, at what time, whether they were going to the movies or not. And Eric was probably thinking about how happy they were going to be afterward, how they were going to free themselves, how they were going to let go of all those ties and the traumatic events in their life, bringing everything into the act. So, they were 2 points of view that in the end fed back on each other. Well, the other feature in Personal Planet is to see what aspects Venus had. Well, Lyle's Venus is conjunct Eric's Sun. That shows the great love they must have for each other as brothers. For Lyle, Eric must be very important. He loves him, he adores him, he wants him. Well, if we see here, they have this aspect of Venus-Uranus in sextile, that is, they have fun together, they like to dance, to play. Between the two of them, they are able to create an imaginary world where there is a lot of harmony, a lot of happiness. They like the same things, and together they have no limits. Well, now I want to go and look at the composite chart of the two brothers. What is a composite chart? It is to draw a third chart with the midpoints between the chart of one and the other. That is to say, with those two charts, a third chart is drawn, and that is the composite chart. So, what is the first thing we are going to see in their composite chart? That the sun and the moon have a beautiful sextile. This is a symbol of the union, the affinity that they have, the mutual protection that they have as siblings. It is a very harmonious aspect, the sun sextile to the moon. We also see that Mars is conjunct the sun, and we already saw in the Synastry that Mars and the sun were in mutual reciprocity. They were tensely related in a quadrature. What is this telling us? That it is further reaffirmed, both by the Synastry and the composite chart, that the two would be capable of coming together to perpetrate an act like the one they did against their parents. To be complicit in an aggressive act that changed their lives. Well, and we also see that Venus has a sextile to Mars. This can give us a clear sign that there was an erotic affinity between the two, that in intimacy they can indulge each other lovingly. Let us note here how the nodal axes of each were in sextile. That is, Lyle's nodal axis is at 23 degrees between Libra and Aries, and Eric's nodal axis is between Aquarius and Leo at 27 degrees. It is related those nodal axes are 3 degrees apart. I want to emphasize this configuration in them. Why? Because the nodal axis determines much of what is karmic in life, what one has almost to fulfill as an evolutionary sentence in the spiritual path or in the path of the soul, whatever we want to call it. In astrology, you can imagine how important the nodal axis can be in our lives, that in India their astrology is based on the nodal axis. Specifically in India, they are called Rahu and Ketu, the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon, and they determine our destiny absolutely. And it's one of those things that you see in astrology. Where you have the nodal axis, there you have an important emphasis. You are telling where you have to walk. Well, what happens in the charts of the two of them? They were in sextile, okay? That is, there was something karmic that they had to live together, a karmic experience. Very interestingly, you go and look at Lyle's nodal axis, and you see that he has a number of aspects. He has a square to the sun, he has a square to Mercury, and he has a sextile to the moon. That is, his karma had to do with the family part and also with the professional part. Because let's not forget that the Sun and Mercury are in the 10th house, but being in quadrature to the nodal axis, Lyle will not be able to accomplish many things at the professional level, and even more if we observe that Lyle's north node is in the 12th house, in the prison. With this aspect, one could then understand why he makes a professional development in jail. But evidently the nodal axis is determined to be in the 12th house. whether it is the head of the dragon or the tail of the dragon, as it is in the case of Eric, who has the south node in the 12th house. I was telling that both brothers were going to leave the prison, and they were going to be united in the fact by the link that they have in the nodal axis. If we look at Eric's nodal axis, we see that he has a square with the moon, that is, a great tension with everything that has to do with the family, and that he was coming to live with his relatives and with his mother. She is a karmic mother, that he has a square with Neptune. Let's not forget that complicated Neptune. In Eric's chart, that is, the nodal axis is saying that you have to live this. And he also had a sesquiquadrature with Uranus, which gives him a certain craziness, and a trine with Mars. That Mars gave him the possibility of executing, of being able to reach the act. I want to leave much constancy on the nodal axis in the Menendez brothers. Why? Because they had a lot to do on August 20th, 1989 when they committed the patricide. So, well, that's the subject of the next video. For now, I'll leave you here. If you liked it and you want me to keep uploading this kind of content, then subscribe, like it.
Well, that's all for today. A big hug says goodbye to all of you, and until our next video. A big hug.